the water in Istanbul is 2.5 million cubic meters. So if you make it, let's say, 500,000 cubic meters lost daily, and the approximate value of the water is $1. So you lose $500,000 in Istanbul for your water loss. So it makes like in the whole year, like around $200 million. So I'm giving the example of Istanbul because of the high population, the high length of the network. But this is sometimes a bit worse in other cities. For example, there are some cities having the existing water losses maybe 30%, maybe 35%. But they are smaller cities. They don't have so many technical capabilities. So their target is not to decrease their water losses in the same speed of Istanbul. So the regulation gives, for example, the period for them, not 5 years, it's 9 years. So according to the size of the city, according to their investment budget, the regulation classifies the utilities. So I hope I can answer your question.
Thank you, Yassir. We'll take another question from the gentleman there.
Thank you very much. I am Bergawi from أكساد. أنا سؤالي موجه إلى الجميع، وسؤالي حول علاقة المياه والمدن. هو نعرف اللي التوسع العمراني والتوسع متاع المدن في أغلب الأحيان يصير بطريقة سامحني في الكلمة عشوائية، اللي عديد البناءات تصير في المدن بدون اتباع التشريعات والقوانين اللي موجودة، وهذا ينجر عنها صعوبة كبيرة في الربط بشبكات التطهير وبشبكات مياه الشرب. أنا سؤالي في هذا السياق معناها كيف العمل في الحد من هذه الظاهرة اللي هي من أكبر التحديات على الموارد المائية في المناطق الحضرية، خاطر بصفة عامة يصير فيه معناها بسرعة كبيرة جدا توسع عمراني، ومن بعد يصير فيه معاناة على الموارد المائية، ويصير فيه عدم توازن ما بين الطلب والعرض وتلوث ومشاكل صحية إلى غيره. وشكرا.
شكرا لسؤالك. بدنا ناخذ الإجابة من البانل، شخص أو شخصين. السؤال بس أعيد السؤال، هو له علاقة أحكي باللغة الإنجليزية، اللي هو the expansion of cities and the growing gap between demand and supply, and how we can basically ensure that city expansion through regulations, through planning is done in a way that basically reduces the gap between what the amount of supply available and the demand that's there. You want to take a shot at it?
Well, I think we need to distinguish between in situations where you have very rapid and massive expansion, either through citizens from the country, like we talked about it was already mentioned in Istanbul, or here in Jordan, where you have a lot of Syrian refugees. I think these are very extreme situations. In many places, urbanization has a pace which could be managed over time. A lot to do with this urbanization has to do with looking not only at the water regulation. A lot has to do with how you actually plan your city and what kind of city do you want to have now and in the future. And there comes a challenge a little bit of changing the paradigm that the water engineer and the water company comes at the end of the pipeline to do the plumbing. And there is a fundamental change is needed in terms of how you actually look at city planning and strategizing your city. Because if you want to, for example, establish places in outside of centers, you might actually need to apply other technologies, decentralized technologies. And how do you actually then start to plan from the beginning that that approach will be appropriate in some neighborhoods, where in other neighborhoods where you probably have high enough density still for housing, their more traditional approaches might actually be the most effective way to go about. So I think rather than sort of looking only at the end, how do we actually sort of try to fix it here, we need to go much more upstream and work with our city planning and the city economists to actually get our city plans quite differently developed going forward.
Thank you, thank you. ناخذ آخر سؤال من الأخ اللي موجود هناك.
شكرا حسين العاطفي from the Arab Water Council. I'd like to thank all of the panel members for their excellent presentations, in fact. I have two questions. In fact. One question for Chair IWA and Carol for the squad. You already presented that the regional cooperation is the key issue here. So I know there are a lot of challenges, and also there are some innovation for this. So we'd like to, you can elaborate a little bit how we can face these challenges to strengthen this cooperation in the field of water utilities. The second question is for His Excellency Mr. Tawfiq, and maybe Yassin also, about the role of private sector. How we can, because there is an important role for private sector in this. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your three questions, quickly. Because I think the lunch is ready out there, so we'll take quick answers from the panelists. Yeah, you want to start?
Maybe I take the one on regional cooperation. What we see is that a lot of times we see when we talk about water and water cooperation, we think immediately about governments need to agree upon things, and it's governments to government cooperation. What we see that is needed here in the region, but also in other regions, but for sure here in the region, is that we have multiple tracks of cooperation, both on the governmental level, but also very much on civil society leadership dimension, of the professionals dimension, and that needs to come to a healthy mix. And I think the challenge going forward is really how do we establish places and opportunities for that kind of cooperation, where we have multiple tracks of cooperation in the region in different constellations going forward. And I think what we will be seeing also later this year in October with the Water and Development Congress that IWA will be organizing here in Amman is exactly that kind of approach, where probably through a water summit just prior to the Congress, we want to bring together that mix of leadership to talk about the multiple tracks of cooperation that will be needed going forward.
Thanks. Carol?
On the issue of regional cooperation also, it is important to also think about the policy and strategies in order to move the process forward. And there has been successes under the auspices of the League of Arab States, under this new Arab Ministerial Water Council that was just set up in 2009, that helped to bring together not only the governments, but the regional organizations and the civil society, contributing to the work of those organizations to move forward. But I'd like to highlight also that the region has to come in itself and find out what its priorities are. And I think that's where this MDG Plus initiative came out of a preparatory process and actually a revolt that the governments and the people found that it wasn't enough to just take what the global indicators were in order to find out what our goals. We have to find out ourselves how to move things forward. And if we have challenges regarding water scarcity, continuity of supply, affordability, when it does come to tariffs and when it does come to access and the human right to water and food and even electricity, we have to be able to collect all those views and then contribute to an Arab regional position that then informs the global processes. And I'd like to highlight that while I mentioned that the General Assembly of the United Nations will be coming together to negotiate and then adopt a global resolution and a declaration on the post-2015 Sustainable Development Agenda, The region is doing that as well. ESCWA is actually the convener of that process. In Amman in April of 2014, we brought together about 150, 200 people to come and consult as to what the Arab priorities are. And in Bahrain, in the beginning of May of this year, we will take a stock taking across the different sectors on what the various perspectives are. And civil society, regional organizations, governments, private sector included that, universities, will be articulating again reassessing based on the draft goals that exist, what is the Arab perspective, so that there is a common understanding of what we need to do and how we can inform that global agenda. And also the global agenda then can help us foster investment, secure financing for a more sustainable future.
Thanks, Carol. Yassine, quickly.
Regarding the private sector, I guess the companies should enact in a social responsibility. So in water loss management, I think making the profit shouldn't be the first priority. So what can the private sector can do is creating more funds for research and development, and also creating budgets for the utilities to finance their own projects, and also supporting the bodies like ACWA or any other non-profit organization or non-government organization for the training programs, for the certification programs, for the publications, and also for these kind of events. For example, let me give a quick example. 3 years ago, some board members from our society visited the country Azerbaijan. So in the capital city Baku, the water supply was very limited, only a couple of hours in a day. But after working there in 3 years, now the water supply is continuous. So actually, we're planning to cooperate with ACWA, and we are ready for all kind of cooperation for any utilities located in Middle East or North Africa region. So we can create any kind of programs in Turkey, in any country. So I guess this is the way that the private companies, should take this account of this problem.
Thank you, Yassine. Thanks, everybody. As you heard this afternoon from the panel, the challenges are huge. Population in the Arab region is growing from 350 million to 600 million people, with huge demands on water, electricity, and more services of utilities. The answers are not always there is increased demand, you increase the supply. The answers could be different. They could be in reform agenda, they could be in the reuse agenda, in the recycle agenda, of leverage, of partnerships, of working together, learning from each other. We need to look for the most cost-effective solutions. And I hope that the discussion that we had today with the panelists, they shed lights about basically their experiences, where we start. We have the 3 days ahead of us to learn more, and the program is full of topics and agenda that touch on innovative solutions for the challenges facing water utilities. With this, I would like to thank everybody and thank our audience here, and announce that lunch is served here. When Muhammad? Downstairs. Downstairs. There is open buffet and rooms available for lunch. Enjoy your lunch and come back in 1 hour or 3. Now it's 15 to 3.